News just in, the World Cup has been cancelled after an independent body discovered that the logos and the opening ceremony were steeped in satanic and Masonic symbolism. Instead, millions of fans have flocked to Spain at the site of the 2010 Bilderberg meeting to protest the actions of the ruling elite. The Federal Reserve Bank's Ben Bernanke has been given a red card for diving the US economy, and British Foreign Secretary William Hague has been reprimanded for match fixing with Israel. Okay, no, the World Cup obviously hasn't been cancelled, and there was probably only about 150 protesters at the Bilderberg meeting in Spain. But today I want to reach out to all those England fans that are blindingly watching the football, drinking their beer, as if it actually matters, as if their life depended on it. Do you know what would happen if England won the World Cup? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, if Wayne Rooney scored a hat-trick, would that get you off the dole? Would that put money back in your bank account after the economic crisis? No, I don't think so. I mean, if it came down to stoppage time and we got the victory by the skin of our teeth, would that stop the unelected president of Europe from calling it the first year of global governance? No. If we win every single game and beat Brazil in the final 10-0, will that stop 130 of the world's most powerful people meeting in secret each year? I doubt it. But I bet if 130 of the world's most famous football players met in secret, it would be on every single news network and you'd be able to tell me everything about it. I've got a question for you. If the ruling elite, the rulers of this world, got through their one world government system, how the hell do we have a World Cup? National sovereignty would no longer exist. There'd be no countries. There would be no World Cup. So maybe this is something you might want to look into if you really do want to watch future World Cups. Look at the energy wasted here. Millions of you chanting and screaming at the TV. Or if you scrimped and saved up enough of your money, your hard-earned money, to go watch it live in South Africa. Imagine if you put all of that energy into bringing the troops home from the illegal and, quite frankly, pointless wars in the Middle East. Imagine if you did that. You know, instead of chanting, "Who are you?" at the referee, how about you chanted, "Who are you?" at George Osborne? Do you know who George Osborne is? He's the guy that wants to cut your public services to pay a fraction of this year's deficit back to the Bank of England, who we actually owe now trillions. And it's apparently a national bank that we own, that we bailed out. How on earth does that work? We owe ourselves trillions? But we have to do it because they say so. And watching the World Cup is not going to change that. If the missus will still sleep with you after all this football watching, your newborn baby is going to have thousands of pounds worth of debt on its head before he even says his first words. I bet that you could name me every single England player and every single player that's important to the World Cup. But I bet you couldn't name me 10 members of the Council on Foreign Relations or Chatham House. You know, I bet after 10 pints of Guinness you could tell me the offside rule inside out, but I bet you couldn't tell me what financial derivatives are, or what the fractional reserve banking scam is, and how it's taking your hard-earned money and giving it to some yuppie on Wall Street or the City of London. You know, I bet you could tell me lots of players and statistics to do with the Italian football leagues, but I bet you couldn't tell me what the Club of Rome is and what it has to do with the corrupt green movement and wanting you to pay a carbon tax. Now, I admit I did used to be a football fan, There's nothing inherently wrong with watching a bit of sport. I mean, I like to go out with my mates and have a beer, and I enjoy watching the World Cup. But this year I'm going to turn off the telly, and I'm going to go into the garden in the lovely weather, and I'm going to read a good book. A good educational book. Because in the grand scheme of things, no matter how enjoyable football is, it doesn't really matter. Not in the current climate that the world is in. You know, this World Cup, I'll probably read a book. Something like, I don't know, The London Bombings, an independent inquiry. Because that's a fundamental topic that we should know about. People should know about the London bombings, but they don't. All they know is what the government told them. Maybe I'll read The Shadow Powers and the Council on Foreign Relations. You want to know who's calling the shots in America, both on the left and the right? Then read this book. It was written in, I believe, the 70s. Yeah, a lot of people still don't know what the Council on Foreign Relations is. Maybe I'll reread The Israel Lobby and US Foreign Policy to understand how dual Israeli citizens have a lot of control over American Congress and the decisions they make and their military-industrial complex. Maybe I'll read some of those instead of watching men kick a ball around on a big oversized field. Now, it's okay to have entertainment, but I'm trying to make a point here. I'm sure you've all watched Soccer Aid and thought it was probably a good cause and it kind of cleared your conscience from sitting there and watching football and not really doing anything. And I'm sure you saw that brilliant show by Piers Morgan where he went over to South Africa and said how great the World Cup would be for their economy. But tell that to the poor people that were booted out of their shanty towns and beaten quite viciously so they could build a stadium that you could sit in and cheer a bunch of men kicking around a football. You see, what they failed to tell you on these programmes is that it was a giant British firm called BAM Construct that actually got the contract to build these giant stadiums, not local South Africans. And any South Africans that were employed to do the menial jobs, of course, were paid a pittance of what they should have done. And the World Cup might put more money into the economy, but let's be honest, generally speaking, it's the top 2% of people that make all the money and drive the economy, while the rest of the poor African slaves are the ones working to keep it that way. I know you don't want to think about this when you're singing 10 German bombers in the air and England came and shot them down, but then again, Rockefeller's Standard Oil was actually the company that fueled those 10 German bombers, and our current Prime Minister, David Cameron, goes to secret globalist meetings where David Rockefeller himself is present. So enjoy the World Cup, make it a family occasion, but spare a thought for the poor South Africans, for the future of this world, and spend at least one day this summer, just one day, researching the economic crisis and its real causes, the secret Bilderberg group, and the ideology for world governance.